the air in the concrete bunker was thick with the smell of stale cigarette smoke, damp earth, and impending defeat. Above the Führer bunker, Berlin was being consumed by Soviet artillery, the rhythmic explosions serving as a dreadful final clock. Adolf Hitler, once the master of massive rallies and deafening cheers, now moved with a shuffling gait, his left hand trembling uncontrollably. His eyes, blue and once famously hypnotic, were glazed over, seeing not the reality of the rubble around him, but ghosts, the ghosts of millions, soldiers, citizens, and the countless victims of his calculated genocide. In this cramped subterranean cage, on April 30, 1945, the story was ending. But every catastrophe begins somewhere. To understand the man who plunged the world into darkness, one must rewind the clock 60 years to an innocuous border town in Austria, far from the apocalyptic fire and smoke. Adolf Hitler was born on April 20, 1889, in Braunau am Inn, Austria-Hungary, to Alois Hitler, a retired customs official, and his third wife, Clara Polzla. His early life was dominated by the tyrannical presence of his father, a man of mercurial temper and strict authoritarianism, who dreamt of his son achieving a bureaucratic career. Alois's attempts to mold the boy were met with stubborn resistance. Adolf, who idolized his easygoing mother and detested the rigid structure of school, harbored an intense, almost romanticized desire to become a great artist. This dream was the first of many collisions with reality. When Alois died in 1903, Adolf was freed from his father's expectations, but financially insecure. After his mother's death from breast cancer in 1907, the 18-year-old moved to Vienna, Austria, armed only with a meager inheritance and his artistic ambition. Vienna in the early 20th century was a cosmopolitan city, a vibrant mosaic of cultures, and a crucible of new, often noxious political and ideological movements. It was here that Hitler's fate was sealed. Twice he applied to the Academy of Fine Arts, Vienna, and twice he was rejected. The failure was devastating, confirming his view that the world, not his talent, was flawed. For the next 5 years, Hitler lived on the margins, drifting between municipal hostels and men's shelters, occasionally making a pittance by sketching and painting postcards. This period of poverty, isolation, and resentment provided fertile ground for the seeds of extremism. He absorbed the toxic political currents swirling through the Habsburg Empire, pan-German nationalism, which preached the union of all German-speaking people, and virulent, institutionalized anti-Semitism championed by figures like Mayor Karl Lueger. Hitler claimed in Mein Kampf that it was in Vienna he became an anti-Semite, believing the Jewish population was behind everything from cultural decay to the poverty he endured. This belief system was not intellectual, it was a psychological shield, providing a single, all-encompassing enemy onto which he could project his personal failures and the frustrations of the modern world. Having failed as an artist, and feeling alienated from the sophisticated urban center, he left Vienna to Munich, Germany, in 1913, believing it to be a purer German city and escaping conscription in the multi-ethnic Austro-Hungarian army, which he despised. When World War I erupted in August 1914, Hitler saw it not as a political conflict, but as a glorious, purifying event, a spiritual awakening for the German people he now considered his own. he eagerly petitioned the Bavarian King Ludwig III to serve and was accepted into the 16th Bavarian Reserve Infantry Regiment. His war experience was formative, serving primarily as a dispatch runner, a dangerous job that kept him on the move along the front lines. He experienced the horror of trench warfare firsthand, though he was often shielded from the worst direct fighting. He was noted for his courage and was twice decorated, receiving the Iron Cross, Second Class, and later the Iron Cross, First Class, an unusual honor for a corporal. The war gave the rootless, friendless man a sense of purpose and belonging he had never known. The army became his surrogate family, and the battlefield, a brutal yet simple environment, provided clarity, a clear friend, a clear enemy, and a clear mission. He was devoted to the cause, almost fanatical in his refusal to complain. In October 1916, he was wounded in the leg, and in October 1918, he was temporarily blinded by a British gas attack. He was recuperating in a hospital near Berlin when the news of the November 11th armistice broke. For Hitler, Germany's surrender was not merely a military defeat, it was a betrayal, a stab in the back, perpetrated by the November criminals, the weak politicians, the socialists, and the Jews on the home front. This belief system, born of rage and the inability to accept defeat, became the cornerstone of his political identity. When he returned to Munich in 1919, he was no longer an aimless ex-artist. He was a radicalized, politically explosive veteran searching for a platform. Post-war Munich was a hotbed of political agitation and paramilitary violence. Still attached to the military, Hitler was tasked with observing and reporting on various political groups. In September 1919, he attended a meeting of a tiny, obscure organization called the German Workers' Party, DAP. Hitler, initially an observer, found himself speaking in an impromptu debate. To his own astonishment and that of the small crowd, his pent-up rage and fierce convictions found a powerful, magnetic voice. He discovered his singular gift, the ability to articulate the frustrations, fears, and resentments of a defeated, humiliated populace with raw, mesmerizing passion. He joined the DAP and quickly transformed it. He renamed it the National Socialist German Workers' Party, NSADP, or Nazi Party, designed its iconic swastika flag, and drafted its 25-point program, a blend of nationalism, anti-Semitism, and pseudo-socialist appeals to the working class. By 1921, he had forced out the original leaders and installed himself as Führer, leader of the party, demanding absolute loyalty. He built a private army, the Sturmabteilung, or brown shirts, composed largely of disaffected veterans and thugs, to protect his meetings and break up those of his opponents. On November 8, 1923, inspired by Mussolini's march to Rome, Hitler attempted to launch a national revolution from a Munich beer hall, the Beer Hall Putsch. It failed disastrously, ending in a brief firefight with police that left several Nazis dead and Hitler arrested. The failed coup, however, ironically proved to be a political gift. His subsequent trial for treason provided him with a massive, nationwide platform. He used the courtroom to rail against the Weimar Republic and became a national figure. Sentenced to 5 years in prison, he served only 9 months in the comfortable Landsberg fortress, where he dictated his political autobiography and ideological manifesto, Mein Kampf, My Struggle. It laid out, in chilling detail,
his hatred of Jews and Bolsheviks, his theory of a German master race, and his geopolitical goal of achieving Lebensraum in the East by conquering Soviet Russia. It was a blueprint for the coming war. Released in 1924, Hitler realized power could not be seized by force, it had to be won legally. Over the next 9 years, he painstakingly rebuilt the Nazi Party into a nationwide political machine, professionalizing its organization and focusing on propaganda that spoke directly to the unemployed and the middle-class voters terrified of communism. The turning point came with the Great Depression, 1929, as unemployment soared and the weak, fragmented Weimar government failed to provide solutions. The Nazis' simple, radical message, blaming all problems on internal traitors and external enemies, gained explosive traction. In the 1932 elections, the Nazi Party became the largest party in the Reichstag, parliament.